Hey, my $650,000 yacht I got. Oh, can we go out on it? No, it's not real.
Hello, fellow netizens, and welcome to Scandalous Games, the show where we take a closer look at video game-related controversies. I'm Kevin Impellizeri, and I do the research and share a story of a video game-related controversy to my friends.
I'm Elford Stephens, long-term video game aficionado.
I'm Andy Hunter, also a longtime gamer, but very much in my own little Nintendo corner.
And I'm Ryan Weaver, also a long-term gamer, and I'm here for that sweet scandal coin.
I'm glad you're able to join us, Ryan. Video game newbie Phil Thomas wishes he could do it, but I'm pretty sure he got busted on financial crimes related to Scandal Coin. So alas, things might be a little bit up in the air with Scandal Coin.
Oh no, I've been horribly misinformed.
So today we're going to pick up our look at the relationship between cryptocurrency and video games. And today we're going to talk about the relationship of crypto and blockchain to the video game industry. So before we get started, let's do a quick recap of what we covered in our previous episode. Last time, we learned that cryptocurrencies are decentralized digital currencies not overseen or managed by governments, regulatory bodies, or financial institutions. The concept has a long history, with the first attempts at digital currencies dating back to the 1980s and 1990s. However, it really took off in the early 2010s following the rollout of Bitcoin. Today, there are legions of crypto coins and tokens with names such as Ether, Dogecoin, Bitcoin, and one that is legitimately called Coin, which I learned about today. All crypto transactions are registered on an indelible public record called a blockchain, and individuals perform the processes of verifying transactions and creating new instances of a given coin through a complex series of calculations. While crypto advocates promise a variety of uses for cryptocurrencies, with some going so far as to say they'll eventually replace traditional currencies like the dollar or the euro, in practice, the most common use case has been speculative trading on a given coin's perceived value. As a result, over the years, currencies like Bitcoin and Ether have been subject to wild cycles of boom and bust. Bitcoin hit its high watermark on November the 7th, 2021, when one Bitcoin was worth just under $69,000. The potential to make a shit ton of money on the speculative market, notwithstanding the extreme environmental cost, lack of scalability for large volumes of transactions, and massive potential of an unregulated digital marketplace for gross mismanagement and or financial crimes, led some people to devise methods of gamifying the crypto market. This begat a genre of games known as play-to-earn or PTE games, also known as blockchain games, where users earn crypto through buying, selling, and creating NFTs, which are unique references to a given blockchain. They're attached to some sort of digital asset like a GIF, a JPEG, or a video file of a sweet touchdown catch by AJ Brown. The first P2E game to gain widespread success was CryptoKitties, a game launched by Axiom Zen/Dapper Labs on November 23rd, 2017, where players bought, sold, and traded NFTs of poorly drawn images of cats, and people could also breed new kitties in hopes of making even rarer and therefore more valuable kitties that they could put on the market. The game was extremely lucrative for about 8 days in late 2017, after which its economy completely collapsed. Nevertheless, its short period of success inspired a host of other games that followed a similar model in hopes of replicating CryptoKitties' whole making lots of money part with hopefully less of the catastrophic economic failure part. As we learned last time, CryptoKitties' successors have been, to put it mildly, a mixed bag. In some cases, you got games like Axie Infinity, where the game's economy collapsed due to hyperinflation, while in other cases, you got games like Axie Infinity, where the game's user base rapidly devolved into a feudalist system of low-income workers from the global south mining for currency at the behest of crypto landlords who rented out their NFTs in exchange for up to 75% of their serfs. Oh, did I say serfs? I meant scholars' income. And in still other cases, you got games like Axie Infinity, where the game's blockchain was hacked and North Korean hackers made off scot-free with about $625 million. And in still other cases, you had games like Axie Infinity, where the people running the game offloaded a bunch of their currency before announcing the hack, knowing full well the currency's value would tank and leave a bunch of players holding the bag. And at even still other times, you got games like Evolve Dates, which just turned out to be a straight-up scam, where the organizers bilked aspiring investors and poorly drawn apes out of nearly $3 million. And again, for all of that and more, check out our previous episode.
All that said, we're reopening Scandal Coin at $5,000 a coin. You better get in while the market is low.
Come on, get in before the SEC gets us.
And our new game, Scandal Infinity, where you breed scandals to make new, even more terrible scandals.
Yeah, we've monetized crime. No one's thought about that.
Except the mafia.
While all this was happening, executives at some of the major players in the video game industry watched the crypto market with mixed emotions. On the one hand, the whole crypto scene was a massive shit show, rife with alarming mismanagement and massive security issues, to say nothing of straight up financial crimes. On the other hand, it also made some people a whole boatload of money, and several game companies wanted to see how they could get a piece of the action. It's likely that Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney summed up a lot of his fellow game studio executives' ambivalence over blockchain games when he commented in a September 27th, 2021 Twitter post, quote, "We aren't touching NFTs as the whole field is currently tangled up with an intractable mix of scams, interesting decentralized tech foundations, and scams," end quote. Some of the big players just straight up said they wanted nothing to do with the crypto scene. Both Valve and Mojang both put out statements banning blockchain elements from the Steam marketplace and from Minecraft servers, respectively. However, some other companies took a non-committal, we're interested in getting interested in crypto kind of stance. For example, in early November 2021, Electronic Arts CEO Andrew Wilson declared in a quarterly earnings call that he felt NFTs and play-to-earn games were, quote, "the future of our industry," end quote. Now, while EA announced no firm plans, reporters observed that the company put up several job postings that referenced future interest in integrating NFTs and blockchain elements into their games, such as a late 2021 listing for a senior director of EA's competitive gaming brand division, which described the division as overseeing existing revenue generators as well as potential future ones, including, quote, "fantasy sports, blockchain and NFTs, and more," end quote.
That is very surprising. I said sarcastically.
No, what we need to do is have EA just buy the concept of crypto, and then they'll just shutter it after 6 months, and then there just won't be any crypto anymore.
Then they'll bring it out in like 2 more years again as a new feature and call it something else. This is a brand new feature. What's this? Just a thing that was called something different? No, it's new.
Others, while not outright promising any blockchain elements, appeared willing to cash in on other companies who wanted to make PDE games. For example, on October the 21st, 2021, likely in response to Valve's hardline against blockchain games on Steam, Epic Games announced that they would be allowing play-to-earn games on their competing marketplace, the Epic Games Store. Now, this may seem contradictory given Epic Games had Tim Sweeney's September 27th statement of how the NFT scene was riddled with scams. However, Sweeney went back to Twitter on October the 15th, 2021 to explain that he was okay with blockchain games so long as companies that listed them on Epic Games super pinky promised to not engage in any illegal or exploitative activity, writing, quote, "Epic Game Store will welcome games that make use of blockchain tech provided they follow the relevant laws, disclose their terms, and are age-rated by an appropriate group. Though Epic's not using crypto in our games, we welcome innovation in the areas of technology and finance," end quote.
Interesting.
They probably make enough money already without it.
Yeah, I would have expected them to we got to have NFTs in Fortnite somehow. But I guess good for them for only mostly being scummy.
Skipping ahead, in terms of game companies doing the right thing, this is about as close as we're going to get.
Oh, boy. I forgot what podcast I was on.
And then there were the true believers who were not content to sit idly by while the likes of Dapper Labs and Sky Mavis kept all the gaming crypto money for themselves. These intrepid trailblazers were willing to roll up their sleeves and dive right into the crypto scene to forge their own path to the moon. And for the next several minutes, we're going to take a look at the blockchain-related escapades of 4 game companies you're probably going to recognize. Those are Atari, Konami, Square-Enix, and Ubisoft. Let's start with Atari, because it's safe to say that no video game company drank the crypto Kool-Aid harder or faster than Atari. Let's step back for a second. Anybody got any fond memories of Atari?
I remember playing Q*bert on the Atari with the little stick when I was probably 8 years old.
I have never played one, actually. I have watched the Angry Video Game Nerd play it several times, but no, I never played one myself.
I have very fleeting memories of playing an Atari because my babysitter's kids, when I was a kid, had an Atari. And so I remember watching them play a Superman game on it, which I'm sure was not very good, but just in my mind, it's like, whoa, you could walk into a phone booth as Clark Kent and then you come out and you're Superman. That's so cool.
I played the same game when I was a kid. So my cousins had a 2600 and they had that Superman game. And I remember having no idea how to play this game. But I remember when I started my dissertation research, I wanted to really get my head around some of those early Atari games. And I will say a bunch of the Activision 2600 games are still a lot of fun. Stampede's a fun little game. I also have pretty fond memories of playing Missile Command on the 2600. But yeah, it's a nice little system. I've got some fond memories of Atari. And this is the part where I get to say that this Atari was responsible for none of them. Because let me be clear, the company that gave us the 2600, that gave us Pong, that gave us Asteroids, that gave us Missile Command, that gave us Yars' Revenge, effectively died in the early 80s. And we'll cover this in more detail in a future episode on the video game crash. But suffice to say for now that after the American home video game market collapsed around 1983 and 84, then parent company of Atari, Warner Communications, basically broke up Atari and sold it off piece by piece, to the point that by the 90s and 2000s, the brand name and the rights to those games were spread out over several different companies. The Atari we're talking about today is a French holding company called Atari SA, which owns the corporate naming rights to Atari, as well as the rights of some, but not all of the original Atari's game library. If our listeners want to learn more about the extremely convoluted history of the Atari brand, there's a really great video game history podcast called They Create Worlds, which did a whole episode on that subject, and I'll put a link in the description. Now, Atari SA saw CryptoKitties' very liberal definition of success, and for a moment likely saw the blockchain as the gateway to the original Atari's Reagan-era glory days. On February 8th, 2018, Atari SA announced that they had partnered with crypto firms Infinity Networks and Paraplay to launch several ambitious blockchain initiatives. And this is no plebeian NFT lines, no siree. Atari announced they're going all in and they're going to launch not one, but two of their own crypto coins. The first of these was creatively named the Atari token, which launched on October the 29th, 2020, with an opening value of 25 cents.
The arcade token, the quarter.
All right, I do appreciate the symbolism of that.
Where can I get one of these?
Now, reportedly, depending on how this coin did, Atari planned on launching a second one called the Pong token that was supposed to be used in Atari-themed casino gambling. That's where Atari is these days.
Wow.
On top of their Atari-themed cryptocurrency, Atari SA was also determined to wring every last penny that they could out of people's nostalgia by launching several lines of Atari-themed NFTs. Yeah, just because I said they did coins didn't mean they didn't also do NFTs. Their first series, called the Atari Capsule Collection, launched on March the 30th, 2021, with a line of 100 NFTs themed around two notable Atari franchises, Pong and Centipede. And you know what? For all we've said about NFTs on this show, I kind of have to hand it to Atari for how much they fucking went for it with the Capsule Collection. In addition to your standard fare of, sprites and pixel art from Centipede and Pong, they also minted 3 NFTs of a picture of a quarter. Allegedly, these NFTs were a recreation of the very first quarter that Pong creator Al Alcorn used to test out the Pong arcade machine when it was first installed at a Silicon Valley bar in 1972. I don't know how they verify that, but that's what they're saying.
What are the NFTs for Pong look? Is it like 2 lines in a square?
It's gameplay footage, so it's moving it back.
Oh, so the NFTs just
So just like the NFL, it's great moments in
So it's a
Pong history. Then in other words.
It's like a great Pong play in an NFT.
That epic bank shot that you made it in on the last point, man, I need to immortalize that in a way that I can trade on the open market. In addition to charging for URLs connected to pictures of a literal quarter, the signature pieces in the line were the Centipede and Pong flagships, which were a pair of NFTs of interactive images of the original arcade cabinets of Centipede and Pong, with a digital signature from each game's respective creator, Donna Bailey and Al Alcorn. The lucky owner of the flagship NFTs was reportedly also entitled to a real-life 1-to-1 replica of that game's arcade cabinet. So you would get a physical cabinet of Pong or Centipede if you bought the NFT. Each of them went up for auction on April the 1st, 2021, with an opening asking price of $5,000 for the Pong cabinet and $10,000 for the Centipede cabinet. We'll check back in on Atari in a little bit for more on their NFTs, but let's check some other companies. And speaking of leverage leveraging their company history for some quick crypto bucks, let's take a look at Konami. Konami is responsible for some long-running and well-loved franchises such as Metal Gear Solid, Castlevania, and Silent Hill. However, in more recent years, the company has had a, let's say, contentious relationship with video games. This includes abruptly canceling Silent Hills, which was an ambitious project involving director Guillermo del Toro that had one of the most amazing viral marketing campaigns ever, and we may cover Silent Hill PT at some point, as well as their acrimonious breakup with Metal Gear Solid creator Hideo Kojima. Today, many in the game industry joke that they're more of a pachinko company than a game company, a reputation supported by the fact that they often make casino gaming machines based on their beloved titles, although one might argue that the deep cerebral horror that is Silent Hill was tailor-made for Japanese slot machines.
Since where you want your horror and slot machines.
In early January 2022, Konami announced it was celebrating the 35th anniversary of Castlevania with a line of 14 NFTs. The appropriately named Castlevania 35th Anniversary NFT line went up for auction on January the 12th, 2022. And in a move that should be all too familiar for listeners of our previous episode on blockchain games, the auction quickly attracted headlines when someone bought the Castlevania Dracula's Castle pixel art NFT for the Ether equivalent of $26,538.
Was that person's name Jonami? Or were they just one of those just driving up the price? Or to make a callback, was it the Konami who bought it? You know, like, I have to support my child Konami's endeavors.
Check out our previous episode on how video games got age ratings in the US. Speaking of retro companies diving headlong into the crypto scene, let's look at Square-Enix. On January the 1st, 2022, company president Yosuke Matsuda issued a public letter virtually lousy with buzzwords announcing the company's entry into the blockchain arena. And while he conceded that much of the NFT market was rife with runaway speculation, a state of affairs he euphemistically described as, quote, overheated trading in NFT-based digital goods with somewhat speculative overtones, regardless of the observed value of the content provided, end quote. He remained confident that the market for Metroid Dread receipts was certain to even itself out eventually, you know, just like it did for CryptoKitties and Axie Infinity. He also felt the crypto scene was giving rise to a financially lucrative, I mean exciting, new brand of gamer, one who realizes the real value of games isn't having fun or overcoming challenges or connecting with other gamers. It's in making money. Wait, did I say making money? I meant contributing to gaming spaces and truly expressing themselves. Quote, I realize that some people who play to have fun and who currently form the majority of players have voiced their reservations toward these new trends, and understandably so. However, I believe that there will be a certain number of people whose motivation is to play to contribute, by which I mean help make the game more exciting. Traditional gaming has offered no explicit incentive to this latter group of people who were motivated strictly by such inconsistent personal feelings as goodwill and volunteer spirit. Again, I need to say, this is a legitimate statement. There's more to this. However, with advances in token economies, users will be provided with explicit incentives, thereby resulting not only in greater consistency in their motivation, but also creating a tangible upside to their creative efforts. I believe that this will lead to more people devoting themselves to such efforts and to greater possibilities of games growing in exciting ways, from having fun to earning to contributing. A wide variety of motivations will inspire people to engage with games and connect with one another. It is blockchain-based tokens that will enable this, end quote. Hey, you in the back, put down that copy of Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI is for fucking closers.
Very interesting. I imagine this person doesn't play video games, because this is a very strange analysis of the motivations of the average gamer.
He's not one of those chumps trying to have fun.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like I would honestly respect him more if he just said, like, you know, we're a business and there's potentially a huge new market opening up and we owe it to ourselves and our investors to explore it. But instead, instead, he's basically saying, yeah, it would be so much better for us to make a game that we don't have to worry about like being a good game. If we could just sell it based on like, hey, if you play this, you'll make money. That's a much better bet for us. I'm like, that's it's just so gross.
It doesn't need to be fun because you're getting paid for this.
Yeah. We don't need to inspire fickle feelings like having fun, enjoying this for its own sake.
The idea that gamers play for goodwill, it's almost like he's trying to discuss gamers as some imaginary person that has nothing to do with people who actually play games. Like, hey, goodwill's not the only reason to play a game. And I'm like, well, I don't know many gamers that play games for goodwill. Like, you do other things with your time for goodwill. But yeah, I agree with you guys. Just be straight up. There is a market of people that don't play games because they're not that interested to them. But they are interested in things like making money. And will they be playing games for fun? No, probably, because they would have been playing them anyway, regardless. But they may now be able to work in some sort of sweatshop where they can be turning out coins for somebody for a little bit of money. I definitely think there's space. Just how YouTube and other services like that have made it possible for people to make money doing something they like, or sometimes doing something maybe they don't like, but there's profit there. There's definitely space. It's funny, though, the way this guy talked about it. Honestly, it sounds like he probably never played video games in his life, has no idea about anybody, but needed to say something, right? And he tried his hardest.
Now, a cynical person might read these statements and accuse Matsuda of attempting to dazzle shareholders with a bunch of trendy tech words just to bump up Square Enix's stock value. And skipping ahead, this is at least partially true. However, Square Enix wanted to make their commitment to the blockchain as clear as possible. On May the 2nd, 2022, Square Enix announced it had reached a roughly $300 million deal to sell two of their game studios, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Interactive Group, as well as the rights to several IPs, including the Tomb Raider, Thief, Legacy of Kain, and Deus Ex series, to a company called Embracer Group AB. The company explained the sale gave them a much-needed cash infusion to both weather geopolitical uncertainty like the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, as well as more money to pursue their NFT dreams.
It's a lot of high value property to get rid of.
You know, it doesn't surprise me that Square Enix got in this, because they have probably been one of the companies that's done the best job getting into the mobile game space. And I'm sure they're making a killing there. So it doesn't surprise me that they have been trying here.
Yeah, they're also not above aggressively monetizing their brands, especially in the mobile scene. They also took the Atari and Konami route and leveraged their long beloved game library for some quick crypto cash, but in kind of a slightly different way. On July the 20th, 2022, Square Enix opened pre-orders for, I'll say, admittedly dope-looking 6-inch high action figure of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. Fans had two pre-order options: a standard edition for $129.99 that was just the figure, or a digital plus edition for $20 more that included an NFT of the figure. Both are reportedly scheduled to come out sometime in November 2023, so more on the story as it develops. It looks cool, but not $130 cool.
That's how I feel about most of those figures that they make.
Yeah, like there are some really sweet Samus figures, but yeah, like not worth $300.
I saw a Kratos one that was really cool, but I'm not going to pay for it.
Incidentally, the irony of a mega corporation pushing for an environmentally destructive digital commodity based on a character who joins a scrappy resistance to battle an evil, environmentally destructive mega corporation was not lost on either game journalists or fans.
So Square Enix really needs to apply a Phoenix down to their reputation after this.
They'll just retcon it in the next remake anyway.
So, sorry, it took me a minute. It's late. It suddenly came to me.
However, despite Matsuda's assertions of shifting paradigms and breaking through dynamic new innovation vectors, all of what we covered so far is pretty standard blockchain fare. Mint and sell some NFTs and watch that crypto cash roll in. Now, for some true upheaval in the gaming crypto scene, we need to look at Ubisoft. On December the 7th, 2021, Ubisoft, the publisher responsible for the likes of the Assassin's Creed and Far Cry series, as well as numerous reports on their toxic work culture, announced the launch of their own line of NFTs called Quartz Digits. Ubisoft separated their digits from the likes of Atari, Konami, and Square-Enix by marketing them as in-game cosmetic items, so you could equip them and use them in the game too. The first game to utilize Quartz Digits was the tactical military shooter Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and the line consisted of several thousand virtually indistinguishable looking equipable guns, helmets, hats, and flak jackets, which Ubisoft promised were unique thanks to each having a distinct serial number, something you're going to easily see in game.
Yeah, when you're shooting a guy, you're going to look, ooh, he's got a different number than me. That's special. So it's basically you get an item in the game that's going to look like other items that people have, but you have a special number that makes it just yours.
You got it.
So they're just doing the same thing other games do, but they're adding a number, and I'm guessing charging a lot more for it because you have a unique special number on there.
That is about the size of it.
Listen, I don't play Ubisoft games in general, but in the barest amount of their defense, I will say the fact that their NFTs are usable in real video games does appear to make them the most useful, or maybe the only useful NFTs I've ever heard of so far. I'm not going to say that they're worth whatever they're charging for them, but compared to an NFT that just is a picture you look at on your computer, which you could otherwise also look at on your computer, it's slightly more useful.
In addition to the fact that they were in-game items and tradable commodities, Ubisoft also hinted that Quartz Digits could transfer between Ubisoft games, potentially giving them a life well beyond the point when Ubisoft, shuts down Breakpoint servers for being unprofitable. They also claimed that the Tezos blockchain on which their NFTs ran was more environmentally friendly than most blockchains, and just in case that was something crypto supporters were worried about. Now, with all this going on, you might be wondering how the likes of Ubisoft and Konami are trying to sell this idea to their player base. So let's take a few minutes and dissect their pitches. A big part of the NFT pitch in gaming hinges on player empowerment, that NFTs give players more agency and control over the items they earn playing games. And the way the argument goes is that, a lot of video gaming revolves around getting stuff, getting weapons and equipment, crafting materials, consumable items, costumes, digital monsters, what have you. However, the argument for gaming NFTs goes that even when you earn these things, you don't really own them, and that they're connected to a specific game. And once you decide to stop playing that game, they're stuck there. And if a company decides to, for example, phase out elements of the game, like shutting down online features or completely delist the game from a digital marketplace, then those items are basically gone, and all that time putting into getting them is wasted. Now, with NFTs, the argument goes that it doesn't have to be this way. And by buying an NFT, you can have something that belongs to you, that can live on beyond the game in which it was created, and you can do whatever you want with it. As Ubisoft explained in their video for Ubisoft Quartz, digits give you control. To examine this a little bit more, I'm going to borrow our conversation we had at the end of our last episode. Say, for example, you play Elden Ring, and you put in the time to finish Ranni's quest line, which is no small task and requires a lot of specific steps to complete. And when you complete her quest line, you're awarded the Darkmoon Greatsword, which is a powerful greatsword that can deal frost damage. It can also throw ice projectiles for low FP cost, which is a really handy range tool in your arsenal in some boss fights like Molyneux. It also has relatively low stat requirements to wield it, making it a viable greatsword for Dex intelligent builds like I did. It's also just an awesome looking weapon, and for me was one of my favorite weapons playing Elden Ring. Now, the way companies like Ubisoft and Square-Enix would pitch it is that you put in the work and the hours of playtime to get the Darkmoon Greatsword. You earned it. Now, were it an NFT, you could own that greatsword, and by owning it, you could take it beyond the boundaries of the lands between. You could sell it on the open market, or you can even just hold on to that Darkmoon Greatsword and potentially bring it into a future game, like a theoretical Elden Ring 2. Now, also tied to this idea of earning digital items is the social capital that goes with that. So, like a weapon like the Darkmoon Greatsword is proof of your perseverance and skill, as is the case for numerous other lockable items that are rewards for completing challenges in games. So it's a status symbol just having that. Take, for example, in Dead Rising, there's a weapon called the Real Mega Buster, which is basically Mega Man's Buster rifle from the Mega Man games and can shoot energy weapons. It's got infinite ammo. It can shred anything basically in front of it. It's super hard to get. To get the Real Mega Buster, you have to get the achievement for killing 53,594 zombies, which, as you can imagine, is very difficult and very time consuming. Now, having that thing, be it the Darkmoon Greatsword or the Real Mega Buster or any one of a number of similar items, it gives you bragging rights. rights and potentially the admiration and envy of other players. And some companies tried to market their NFTs in a similar way. For example, Ubisoft launched the Quartz Digit line with a limited time offer where early adopters could earn free NFTs for completing in-game tasks in Ghost Recon Breakpoint. For example, the first 200 players to successfully kill 20 wolves while being hunted earned a flak jacket called the Wolf Chest Rig. I don't know if that's hard or not. Meanwhile, Konami tried to sweeten the FOMO pot for their Castlevania NFTs by promising that each first buyer would be immortalized on the official Konami Memorial NFT homepage for 10 months. And only if their username was approved by Konami, and only if they promised they wouldn't use their NFTs, quote, illegally or inappropriately, end quote.
So don't use them to pay for sex. Okay.
Another part of the NFT sales pitch in gaming specifically has been the chance to own a piece of video game history. It's no coincidence that Atari, Konami, and Square-Enix all framed their NFT lines to commemorate beloved games like Castlevania and Centipede and Final Fantasy VII, often tying these kinds of NFT lines to game anniversaries. Atari's slogan for the Atari Capsule Collection was literally own a piece of history. However, these arguments for digital ownership come with several important caveats. For one thing, while there's all this talk of giving players the freedom to do whatever they want with their gaming NFTs, in practice, that freedom is basically just the freedom to either show them off or sell them to somebody else. On top of that, as far as owning a piece of history or something more permanent than regular in-game items goes, all this alleged consumer power is still contingent on game makers and their blockchain partners developing and maintaining systems to support their NFT lines. And it's worth mentioning that the video game industry has a horrendous track record of preserving its own history, a topic we will cover in a future episode. And as I mentioned before, Ubisoft alleged that the Quartz Digits in Ghost Recon Breakpoint could potentially be brought over to other games. However, the company offered no concrete plans for this, and skipping ahead, it looks like they never will. On top of that, I can only imagine the logistics involved for a developer who has to account for items designed for completely different games into theirs. Although I'm not going to lie, I'd be up for bringing in my Darkmoon Greatsword into the likes of Madden and NFL. Let's see Cyber Bill Belichick plan a defensive scheme around concentrated ice blast for my Magic Ice Sword.
That would be interesting. Bring it into Call of Duty. I'm sitting there and I get hit with ice blast somehow. I don't know what this is.
I think Red Dead would be fascinating with Predator drone strikes from Call of Duty.
Yes.
And speaking of player control over in-game items, it's not like that's a new thing. It's been around well before NFTs. I mean, there's a long history of players buying, selling, and trading in-game items for real-world money. And whole user-driven cottage industries of item exchanges have proliferated for a long time, especially in online-based games like World of Warcraft, Diablo 2, RuneScape, and Team Fortress 2. Even Axie Infinity's Manager Scholar system is basically a new iteration of gold farming from World of Warcraft. Hell, users in EVE Online set up their own bank.
Did they really?
They had lending practices and interest rates. They made a bank in EVE Online.
Wow.
And that was all users who did it. It was actually one guy who did it.
Wow.
EVE Online is wild. Going back to the Darkmoon Greatsword analogy, NFTs aside, there's really very little stopping me right now from making an arrangement with someone else online where they pay me an agreed amount of money and then I meet them in game and just give them that sword. I'm not going to do that. It's a kick-ass sword. But there's nothing that really stops me from doing that. And FromSoft doesn't see a dime if I do that.
Right.
Therefore, it seems from a cursory glance to me that despite all this talk of player freedom and agency, the group that is the most to gain from an NFT-based agreement are the game companies themselves. Gold farming in WoW and selling weapons in Diablo 2 happen outside the reach and control of the makers. And oftentimes those kinds of financial arrangements are banned under the game's terms of service. However, NFTs give a couple of benefits to game companies. On the one hand, they give a quick cash infusion on the NFT auctions. They give passive income as they receive a cut every time their NFTs get resold, as well as a means of centrally controlling the flow of assets through their games. I mean, it's like when Bethesda started charging for Fallout 4 mods. Every experience needs to be filtered from the top down. And you know the top's going to get its cut.
That didn't last long.
Yeah, people hated that.
Yeah. People are like, nope, we're not doing this. Didn't last long.
Skipping ahead, we're going to see some parallels to the response to Bethesda trying to charge for mods in this.
That's video game industry trying to charge for things that they took for free from the video game community and trying to make money off of it.
Some of those modders put in the same amount, if not more, work than the game company, but you get it for free.
I mean, not to go on a rant here, but a huge part of what these corporations base their profit on are ideas that they took from the gaming community that were are created and then released for free, right? So when we see them trying to charge for something like that, but I definitely see opportunity here. I'm waiting to see if any of these companies have taken advantage of some of these ideas.
I don't know, man. Some people play to contribute and some people play to just have fun.
Some people play for goodwill.
Yeah, get all that goodwill when you join public lobbies and games. Yep.
Those things are, hubs for camaraderie
Yes.
and the peaceful exchange of ideas. So going back to this idea of them getting their cuts, like for example, in a detailed look at the Ubisoft Quartz program for Ars Technica, Kyle Orland noted that Ubisoft, for all their talk of player freedom, exerted an awful lot of centralized control over their NFTs. Players had to achieve a certain XP level in Breakpoint just to qualify for digits. They also could only own one specific type of digit. So like no cornering the market on flak jackets or digital hats for you.
Open a hat shop.
Yeah, I have all the hats. They're all indistinguishable, but I promise that there's a teeny tiny serial number on there that says that they're unique. And reselling could only happen for these NFTs through Ubisoft approved marketplaces. Also, if you got banned from Breakpoint, they took your NFTs.
Oh, wait a minute. You said that those belong to you and you could take them other places, but you can't play this game anymore and take them away?
Yeah,
Do you get your money back?
If you break server rules and you get kicked, if you modded your system in some way, no NFTs for you.
Well, that's player freedom. But once you get banned, you're not a player anymore. So you don't need that freedom.
I see. Okay. That's how they get you.
And of course, then this raises the question of what game companies are really trying to get out of the NFT market. And the way I see it, their interest in the blockchain has a lot to do with the economic realities facing the video game industry, especially among the big players like Square-Enix, Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Activision Blizzard. For one thing, over the last several years, there's been a growing amount of consolidation in the blockbuster games industry, with the big companies getting absorbed or merged with other big companies. For example, one of them, on January the 18th, 2022, Microsoft announced plans to buy up Activision Blizzard in an all-cash deal for roughly $75.5 billion.
Imagine being the guy at the bank when they show up with that cash and you're like, what am I going to do with this? I don't know.
So on top of big deals like that, the majority of big publishers are publicly traded companies whose first priority is not to the players who buy their games, but to their stockholders who want to see ever increasing profits, at every single quarterly earnings report. Because as Axie Infinity taught us, infinite growth is a totally sustainable way of doing business. As a result, in the pursuit of greater and greater returns over the last several years, there's been a shift among AAA publishers away from viewing games as single purchase items where they only make money on the initial sale and more toward a live service model where that game purchase is supplemented by additional in-game purchases over an extended period of time, anything from several months to several years. Some companies have also embraced a free-to-play model where the base game is free and the player is pressured to make in-game purchases, as in like Fortnite, Team Fortress 2, and Overwatch 2. And examples of live service items include downloadable content, premium currency, season or battle passes, or microtransactions where players can buy in-game assets such as experience points, character upgrades, or gear. And this is also where we get loot boxes, where players get randomized loot drops in hopes of getting rare items. Although you can always help improve the odds of getting better gear, but just a little extra money for more currency to buy more loot boxes, or just straight up buying the loot boxes. And some games allow players to get these by grinding. However, they often present spending a little money as a quicker and easier option. We're going to save a more detailed analysis of this for a future episode. I'm thinking of maybe doing something on the backlash to Star Wars Battlefront 2. For now, I'll say that these mechanics, especially loot boxes, have been controversial among players. Companies justify them as either a necessary evil to combat rising production costs or as an exciting new revenue generator, while many fans denounce them as being predatory and exploitative and creating unfair disparities in the player base by encouraging what they call pay-to-win environments, where success is often connected to how much players are willing to spend. On top of that, many critics have pointed out that putting up money in hopes of a randomized chance of a valuable payout is basically the definition of gambling.
Yep. I mean, that's the whole idea with loot box. I've never liked loot boxes.
I don't understand why they couldn't just take the items you're going to put in there and then put them up for sale. People can get what they want. I guess they get more money because people want a certain item. They're going to get a whole bunch of stuff they don't want. So they're going to have to keep buying them.
And I think also because it's basically gambling, there's a certain type of addictive personality that will wind up then spending not just some more, but way more than they would have if you could just buy the one item that you wanted.
And see, that would not get me. They'd get more money from me if they let pick what I'm getting because I don't like to gamble.
I don't know if it was 10, 15 years ago when mobile games, Zynga and everything came out, and it was starting to really rise from nowhere. And they were finding that there's like a small percentage of people that'll actually pay a lot of money for those services. Since then, everybody's been trying to figure out how to get to that 1 percentage of the gamer base that will shell out tons of money. And I see the loot boxes as the same thing. Some people may do a little bit of it, but there's going to be some people, maybe 0.5%, that will spend a lot of money on those loot boxes.
They have a name for those people. They're called whales.
Which I think comes from casino terminology, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the techniques that the mainstream industry are doing were inspired by what the mobile industry was doing. But yeah, we'll talk about this in detail in a future episode. So yeah, as a result of this, it's better to think of NFTs in the mainstream game market less as an anomaly and more as part of this larger system in which the likes of EA and Activision and Ubisoft have been transforming games effectively from something players experience and enjoy into perpetual money-making machines to bolster their bottom lines and please their shareholders. And on the one hand, NFTs are comparatively low maintenance earners. I mean, both through the initial sale and the commission they get on resales. So as you recall from our last episode, the interest of the NFT get a certain percentage back every time it's resold on the secondary market. So for example, Konami reportedly earned $162,000 on the initial auction for the Castlevania 35th anniversary NFT line, minus the additional fees, like gas fees and the percentage that OpenSea, the place that did the transaction, got. And they stood to earn an additional 10% on every subsequent resale of those NFTs. However, it is worth mentioning that earning extra money on resales is, of course, contingent on there still being an active NFT selling market, and more on that in a little bit. On the other hand, while I'm no financial expert, I imagine that a super easy way to excite investors is to tell them your company is getting in on whatever the big tech trend happens to be at the time, regardless if you have any plans on following through with it. And many companies, tech, gaming, or otherwise, saw big stock bumps after the mere mention of crypto buzzwords like metaverse, Web 3.0, blockchain, and NFTs. On the gaming front, Atari SA's stock value jumped 52% after the February 8th, 2018 announcement that they were getting into crypto. Square-Enix's stock went up 8%, its highest single-day increase in 6 months after Yosuke Matsuda declared the company would be looking into the blockchain. Some companies also reasoned that combining live service stuff with the blockchain would make two great tastes that taste great together. And with that, let's check back in on Atari. On January the 27th, 2022, Atari SA announced its latest innovation in gaming technology, the Atari GFT, in honor of the 50th anniversary of Atari's founding. And remember, that's again the original Atari, not the holding company that currently holds the name. Atari SA chose to manipulate gamers' nostalgia. No. I mean, honor the legacy of the company that gave us the likes of Pong and Missile Command by releasing a line of Atari-themed NFTs. However, GFTs were not just any regular NFTs. When you bought a GFT, it initially appeared as an animated picture of a gift wrap package, which would open at a later date, revealing a randomized Atari-themed NFT of varying degrees of rarity, ranging from common, which is between 8 and 35% chance, all the way to epic, which was a 0.2% chance. So congratulations, Atari. You gifted the world with the unholy union of NFT loot boxes.
Wow.
Does the G in GFT stand for gambling?
It's a gift.
Oh, that's not how you gift things.
I didn't put this in the notes, but the way that the person who developed this idea described them as like the gaming equivalent of greeting cards. You know, those things you hold on to forever and you sell to your relatives after they give them to you.
Yeah. Yes, you keep them forever and ever.
As an aside, I feel it's worth mentioning that the GFT program was the brainchild of a crypto company that was then called Republic Realm and is now called Every Realm, which is a company with a strong track record of convincing people to pay obscene amounts of money for basically nothing. Case in point, on November 23rd, 2021, the company announced that they had sold a virtual yacht for use in the metaverse game The Sandbox for $650,000.
Get a real yacht.
You show your girlfriend your little yacht on the TV, all pixelated, floating on pixelated water. Then she walks out.
Hey, my $650,000 yacht I got. Oh, can we go out on it? No, it's not real.
Assuming this sale is real and not just a stunt, I hope that the person bought like a boating hat. Like they got like the yachting jacket and the hat.
Captain's hat. He took boating lessons and everything.
You know, it's interesting. I'm trying to think about ways that this could work for these companies. I mean, it is working in some sense. They are making money.
Yeah.
People spend money on this stuff. It's just that people spend money and then, you know, other people complain.
I think if they did the one model where it's something you use in the game and it's somehow unique, they would make a lot of money because people would buy that.
You know, most games nowadays, they'll sell DLC to make extra money. You know, like Monster Hunter, you can buy like all sorts of props, like birthday balloons and stuff that your character will carry around in town. Like it doesn't affect the game at all. It's just some funny prop, and that actually doesn't bother me. Like
it's cosmetic stuff. It doesn't make you more powerful. It just looks different. It's fun,
and it's a good game. So I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, you can buy it at Monster Hunter for $20, and I remember my mom taking me to the video game store and seeing Nintendo games when I was a kid for $70. Right?
Yeah.
I get that companies want to make more money. I also understand they sell a lot more games, though. So
some people do like the idea of a constant stream of new stuff in games. Like Monster Hunter is a great example of that. Like when they add new monsters and you can craft new gear from that. Now, fortunately, Monster Hunter World never went the angle of, okay, we're going to charge you to do all those things.
I mean, I like that stuff too. There's games I play that, I mean, I know it's like a bad word, but I did get hooked into Fortnite. I never thought I would, but I do play it and I do have fun with it. I have some skins. I like some of the ones in there. Like the Marvel ones are cool. Like run around as like, you know, Captain America.
And that makes sense because they're going to have to license those, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you know, if you're an adult, you know, you're going to have to pay for that, and they should make some money off of it, you know?
So speaking of loot boxes, given players strong feelings about live services in video games, you might be curious what the gaming community thought about all of this. Anybody want to guess what people thought of NFTs coming into games?
I feel like there was some hesitation and worry about it because my thinking is it's going to make, like I just said, I like some of these games where you can buy cosmetic items. I feel like if it's an NFT, it's going to make buying that stuff more expensive because it's going to be this unique thing that you're going to have to pay more for.
I'm really torn between thinking like, is the very online, very vocal portion of the gaming community just so cynical that they hated the introduction of NFTs, or are there sufficient number of technophiles among gamers that they loved it? But since it seems like not every single game has an NFT attached, I'm going to guess it wasn't that warm of a reception.
You know, I haven't listened to this podcast for quite some time. I recognize that the video game community is rather unsophisticated. And when they see this new NFT coming out, they probably embraced it. They probably waited up at night excited about the opportunity to be able to spend money on this because it's new and it's flashy and it looks neat.
I appreciate the different takes on the internet gamer culture. And my readings of it, going through a bunch of stuff, they hated it. They really hated it. And angry gamers facing the insertion of NFTs into the gaming world did what angry gamers do best. They took to the internet to complain. With that in mind, let's check back in on Ubisoft, which announced the launch of the Quartz Digit line with a teaser video on YouTube on December 7th, 2021. According to a report from Video Games Chronicle, after one day, they had roughly 16,000 engagements, including about 800 likes, compared to over 15,000 dislikes.
Damn.
It's an approximately 95% dislike ratio.
Wow. They really did not like that idea.
It was so bad, Ubisoft delisted the video.
Yeah, we should probably take this down immediately.
I can imagine them being like, they're so excited about that slick video, and the minute goes out, oh no.
We're sorry, this was supposed to go out on April 1st. This was a joke video. We didn't mean any of it.
So I understand with these corporations, the management, they don't have anything to do with the actual development or they're involved in the game. Before they release these ideas, they really should check with those guys down there and just bounce it off them. Just say, hey. And if Bert tells you it's really, really bad, try to like retool it rather than just ignoring him because he works for you. Like just listen a little bit.
Gamer backlash also made some companies think twice about adopting NFTs. And for example, on December the 15th, 2021, GSC Game World, responsible for the Stalker series, announced a partnership with a Ukrainian digital asset / NFT company called D-Market to develop NFTs for their upcoming game, Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. Interestingly enough, according to reports, GSC also planned to hold a promotional auction where the winner got to become an NPC in the game, or as they described it, the chance to become the first ever meta-human.
Oh no. Isn't that what the Flash is and all the DC people? Yeah.
That's the fun kind of meta-human. They wanted the Mark Zuckerberg kind of meta-human.
So I don't get to run really fast.
You have to pay for that somehow.
Well, you get to run really fast from anyone attempting to make a true emotional connection with you. That's what that kind of meta-human is.
Fast forward 1 day later, and on December the 16th, 2021, GSC Game World announced that they were no longer planning to put NFTs in Stalker 2, citing fan backlash.
Wow.
According to a post on the official Stalker Twitter, quote, based on the feedback we received, we've made a decision to cancel anything NFT related in Stalker 2. The interest of our fans and players are the top priority for the team. We're making this game for you to enjoy, whatever the cost is. If you care, we care too, end quote. My absolute favorite response on the Twitter thread is one crypto bro who blamed GSC's reversal on cancel culture, saying, quote, angry cancel mob wins again. Now, if those same people would do some good for once in their lives and put that to actual humanitarian needs, but they don't actually care about that, lol, end quote.
Was this man's username actually Crypto Bro? Because that would be great.
The woke PC police kept us from being able to buy stuff in games.
Funny thing is, a lot of what happens with these games is really kind of capitalist. Like, these decisions happen because they can now track and see people will just stop playing the game. So it's like, you can't really blame politics. In the gaming space, people generally are responding based on the quality of the game. If it's good, they're playing. If it's not good, you can't really blame anything else.
Bet that guy's user picture is just a picture of Fry holding out money saying, take my money. Shut up, take my money.
It's been a while since I looked up this person who said this. I would bet you anything it's like a Bored Ape. You might be curious what is that they don't like about it. And so why don't we take a closer look over this discourse in the gaming community over NFTs, and perusing the comments section on virtually any article covering NFTs on major gaming and tech news sites like Polygon, Kotaku, The Verge, or Ars Technica. The discourse frequently breaks down into a whole bunch of gamers saying how much they hate NFTs and arguing with maybe like one or two crypto bros who come out of the woodwork to defend them. And pretty much any time a game company puts out a crypto or NFT related post on Twitter, gamers critical of NFTs cite a lot of the arguments that we made in our previous episode. For example, crypto mining's heavy environmental toll and the market's proliferation of scams. Some also view NFTs as another symptom in this whole live service model thing, citing them alongside microtransactions and loot boxes as tacked on features that no one asked for to wring more money out of players. For example, commenting on a February the 10th, 2022 post on Quartz Digits by Ubisoft's official Ghost Recon Twitter, one poster bluntly replied, quote, Ubi, stop this. Nobody wants NFTs. We want a better game, end quote. More than a few people were also quick to point out that people who bought NFTs were basically spending money to buy literally fucking nothing.
Yeah, it's basically nothing physical.
You haven't seen my sweet yacht.
Yeah. Sweet yacht that I can't get on.
I don't understand NFTs well enough. I could see like you have a game and then you create a unique shirt that somebody can buy for their character, right? And I could see some value in that, like somebody equipping their character with that unique shirt and someone else saying, hey, I'll pay you $5 for that because it's an NFT and I want my character to have that shirt. But I wonder, I don't know enough about programming, if that could work in a game like GTA, for instance. Would all of these NFTs have to be programmed into every single game in order for a system like that to work?
I mean, some of the complaint is also that the NFT market they create false scarcities of virtual items. So like, we're going to have this flak jacket and have them virtually indistinguishable. And we're going to make 200 of them. them. And then once those are out, you guys fight it out over who wants them. And then like, yeah, go ahead and buy it. And then see what the market says, with the idea that if there's only a certain amount of them on the market and people get FOMO and want to have that thing, like a shirt, like you're mentioning, Elford, that they'll then pay an exorbitant amount of money for it. And then that will then go back to the companies and they'll get a percentage in every one of those things. On the other side, crypto supporters, aside from just accusing critics of spreading FUD, which as we learned last time is short for fear, uncertainty, and doubt, typically responded one of three ways. The first was basically the sales pitch of user freedom that Ubisoft promised with the quartz digits. So for example, as one supporter explained in a January 1st, 2022 Verge article on Square-Enix's blockchain announcement, quote, "I'd much rather purchase that NFT version of a sword that can be resold versus a microtransactional one through today's methods. That's just money down the drain," end quote. A second argument was that gamers are out of touch and don't understand the awesome power of the blockchain to do something. For example, going back to that same commenter I just said a moment ago, when a bunch of people pushed back on that person responded, quote, "This isn't an actual conversation. If you don't understand what decentralization or blockchain technology is, then this conversation is fruitless. It's just the angry old man shaking his fist at the things he doesn't understand. Do some research or be content with your lack of understanding and whine on these forums about your irrational fears of things you don't understand. You guys are experts at that on this site," end quote.
Old man yells at cloud.
Yeah. Another supporter also took the okay boomer approach to critics of NFTs, commenting on a January 15th, 2022 Kotaku post, quote, "We're on the cusp of a generational divide represented by NFTs. You know which side you fall on based on your opinion. If you openly mock them and people who buy them, you're part of the previous generation, i.e. old. If you can say, I wouldn't personally pay so much money for something so insignificant, but it's still cool if other people want to, congratulations, you're not bitter yet," end quote. And people in this vein really like comparing NFT skeptics to internet skeptics in the 1990s, promising that they'll be vindicated in the end, and won't you naysayers be kicking yourself when that happens. The third argument is that gamers are sad losers who hate the thought of making money. As one crypto bro succinctly explained on a Twitter thread from December 16th, 2021, quote, "Looks like people want to stay broke and not profit off of video game assets, lol weirdos," end quote.
Well, I guess we can test that easily, because if all these losers are just playing games out of goodwill, then, that's a fickle feeling and that'll go away. And then, it might soon indeed be replaced by love of making money.
Money never goes away.
It's such a strange criticism. I mean, I get that they have an opinion, but it's almost like, who are they talking to? Like, you're in your basement, you're playing Call of Duty with your friends, you're having a good time. And then this guy's like, dude, man, you're making money right now. It's like, yeah, I was making money at work. Now I'm trying to play this game. Please stop talking to me, man. I can't focus.
For some of these guys, the hustle just never stops. And it's like every moment I could be making money.
What these guys really should be doing is focus on video game gambling, like all of this esports. No, I'm just saying, like, so people watch football because they love football. And then some people watch football because they also love to gamble in football too, right? So like, if you go up to the guy who's going into the football stadium and you're like, hey man, you just going in here for goodwill? You could be making some money, and he's gonna look at you funny, like, "What are you talking about? I'm trying to have some fun here." You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a space for them to make money. Like, their criticisms of the community are just kind of silly.
Stop enjoying arts and entertainment. What's wrong with you?
There's a meme. It's like, stop having fun. In addition to fans, many developers were also not sold on NFTs in gaming. For example, in the lead up to the Game Developers Conference, the organizers of GDC put out a survey to their roughly 2,700 members, asking, among other things, their thoughts on blockchain and NFT elements in gaming. On January the 21st, 2022, the GDC published their findings in the group's annual State of the Game Industry, noting that the overwhelming majority of their members had no interest in adding blockchain or NFT elements into their games. When asked, what is your studio's interest in non-fungible tokens, 70% responded not interested. And when asked, what is your studio's interest in cryptocurrency as a payment tool, 72% responded not interested. As with fans, several game development companies were also quick to both denounce NFTs and call out other companies that supported them. For example, on January 31st, 2022, Team 17, the company behind the Worms series, announced a partnership with crypto company Reality Gaming to put out a line of Worms-themed NFTs. In response, Agro Crab, who had published their game Going Under through Team 17, denounced the company's decision and announced that they would not work with Team 17 in the future, declaring in a strongly worded tweet, quote, "We believe NFTs cannot be environmentally friendly or useful and are really just an overall fucking grift," end quote. Several other companies, including Platonic Games, which are responsible for the Ukulele series, and Ghost Town Games, makers of Overcooked, also put out statements asserting that they would never add NFTs into their games, with Ghost Town Games posting in a January 31st, 2022 tweet, quote, "We don't support NFTs. We think they carry too great a social and environmental cost," end quote. In response to public pressure, on February the 1st, a day after announcing their plans to get into the NFT market, Team 17 announced that they were abandoning the MetaWorms NFT project and stepping away from the blockchain. However, that isn't to say that crypto had no supporters in the game dev scene. Perhaps the most high-profile developer to come out in support of the blockchain was Peter Molyneux. Anyone here familiar with Peter Molyneux?
Lionhead Studios?
That's him, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do you know anything about Molyneux the person?
Oh, wait, I think, is he somebody who's famous for just like overpromising? I think that's like one thing I feel like I've heard of him or.
That is generally the one thing people know about Peter Molyneux. So we may do a whole episode on Peter Molyneux at some point. So I'll give you the short version. Peter Molyneux as a dev came to prominence as a PC game developer during the late 90s. He's responsible for the Dungeon Keeper, the Black and White, the Fable series, Populous is another one of his games. And through the 2000s, Molyneux made prominent appearances at gaming conventions like E3 to promote this or that project he was involved in. Molyneux has developed a reputation among fans for, how can I put this delicately, overpromising features in his games, to the point that on one end of the spectrum, you have people like Ben Croshaw of Zero Punctuation fame, who described him in a 2007 review of Fable as a person who, quote, "has a tendency to promise the earth and be ultimately crippled by his own ambition," end quote. And on the other hand, you have John Walker of Rock Paper Shotgun, who straight up asked Molyneux in a 2015 interview if he thought of himself as a, quote, "pathological liar," end quote. So needless to say that a guy with a well-documented history of hyping up projects only for the finished project to fall well short of his lofty promises, entering the world of crypto did little to allay people's fears that the whole crypto NFT scene was a massive grift. In December 2021, Peter Molyneux announced that his company, 22 Cans, had entered a partnership with crypto-based firm Gala Games to work on a game called Legacy. According to Molyneux, the game consisted of two components. First, players design a digital product in a creation studio, which they can then sell on an online marketplace to earn the game's currency, creatively called Legacy Coin, which can be converted into real money. The second part is a business management sim, where players design factories, manage resources, hire workers, and customize elements of their digital town, such as developing workers' homes. Molyneux also promised that there would be a risk-reward system for product development, where players had to weigh the possible environmental and health ramifications of rampant overproduction against the tantalizing allure of maximizing profits. In a December 2021 interview with The Verge, Molyneux claimed the game would have a, quote, "full pollution simulation," end quote, where overproduction can cause in-game trees to die and employees to develop, quote, "really bad coughs," end quote. Who doesn't love a black lung simulator?
Yes. Oh, look at that guy. He's coughing up blood.
And all this leads me to wonder if Legacy's digital factory workers will get paid in digital script that they can pay at the digital company store and get busted by digital Pinkertons when they try to form digital unions. Now, are you all familiar with when someone says something as a company town?
Yeah, I feel like maybe an example might be like a mining town. The town basically exists just because they set up a mine there, and the grocery store is owned by the mine, and the school was built by the mine. It just exists for the benefit of the one industry.
I don't know if it's unique to America. Probably not, but it's definitely a very important part of the American story, how people were taken advantage of. And basically, you're moving somewhere a little bit more isolated from your big cities. They get you involved in the work. I think the mining towns were the biggest ones, and they're paying you in a credit rather than in normal currency. And you're finding out that the credit is only useful at places where they are selling products to you. And so it's a cycle that you cannot get yourself out of because you're not earning anything that is useful to anyone outside of the company.
You all summed it up really well. So they're often really commonly associated with American industry and American labor, especially in the 19th into the 20th century. And yeah, the company ran the town, usually based on one industry or one resource, like a mining town. It might be a specific factory. And yeah, everything was centrally controlled by the company. They paid them in what they called scrip instead of actual money. And so you could only use that stuff at the company stores. They paid for their housing to the company, and people would go into irrevocable cycles of debt. They were often ruled with an iron hand. They had really harsh responses to things like unionization. And they have this very deep legacy in American labor history as being places where workers were just outright exploited. So Peter Molyneux's making a game about that. And the creation of what appeared to be a company town management sim led some reporters to raise concerns about the real history of company towns and their legacy of worker exploitation. And it just seems like in these episodes on Crypto Week Done, it just seems like a common theme that they inevitably default to the horrendous excesses of capitalism, from shameless commodity speculation predicated on unsustainable exponential growth to environmental degradation to exploitative semi-feudalist systems where all the wealth is concentrated among a small percentage of people who get rich off the backs of a massive underclass. And now we've got company towns. When Adi Robinson of The Verge asked Molyneux if he was concerned about legacy's implications vis-a-vis the history of company towns, Molyneux gave a nonsensical response about how he once saw former Microsoft head Steve Ballmer changing in the company locker room. Here's the question that Robinson asked. Quote, especially in America, company town has a pretty negative connotation. It's seen as being synonymous with companies controlling the lives of their workers and making it hard for them to leave. Is that intentional? End quote. That's the question. Here's Peter Molyneux's answer. Quote, well, I'm not saying that my monthly trips to Redmond up at Microsoft were any inspiration. You're never quite sure where inspiration comes from, but it certainly felt a little bit like that. You know, you went to the gym, and everyone in the gym, worked for Microsoft. And I'm English, so going into the changing room and then being naked in front of any human being is just a deep, terrifying thing. And that was even more terrifying when you realize there's Steve Ballmer over in the corner, and there's someone else over there, and you realize that, oh my God, I'm part of this family. End quote.
What?
I don't think I got it.
He forgot the question halfway through and just kept going.
So you know how like when you go to a restaurant that's near the place where you work and sometimes you see people at the restaurant who also work where you do? Yeah. Anyway, video games.
And sometimes they're nude for no reason. I don't know.
It's like, Pete, are you okay? He's either having a terrifying neurological episode, in which case we're all having a very unfortunate laugh at the expense of Peter Molyneux, or it's more likely that Peter Molyneux has no idea what a company town is. That's what I take from that, which this is, again, the bitter humanities major that I am. PSA for upcoming STEM majors. When you're thinking about elective courses, maybe take a couple of history classes. In any case, these potentially problematic implications, combined with Peter Molyneux's less than stellar reputation of delivering on his promises, certainly didn't faze Legacy's investors, who bought up plots of the game's digital land to the tune of about $54 million in its first week of trading alone.
Wow. At what point did Molyneux just cash his stocks and move on? Day two?
Let's start wrapping up this story by fast forwarding to roughly the present. As 2022 went on, the enthusiasm over blockchain elements in gaming, especially NFTs, diminished significantly. You may recall in early November 2021, EA CEO Andrew Wilson declared that NFTs were, quote, the future of our industry, end quote. However, he took a significantly different tone during a February the 1st, 2022 investor call when he explained, quote, right now it's not something we're driving hard on, end quote, noting their adverse environmental impact and their propensity for rampant speculation. Even true believers like Atari started scaling back their crypto ventures. There's not even a link to buy NFTs in the Atari capsule collection on the company's website, and they've not minted any new NFTs since the GFT line. The company officially abandoned its Atari token on April the 18th, 2022. Now, if you recall, it opened at 25 cents. At the time of its cancellation, it was worth about 1.2 cents. As of this recording, you could still buy, sell, and trade Atari tokens. Right now, it's worth about 4/10 of a penny.
Whoa.
Wow.
Buy low, sell high. Meanwhile, Ubisoft discontinued the Quartz Digit line for Ghost Recon Breakpoint, issuing their final NFT on March the 17th, 2022. And they made some promises that they were going to continue to try to do this even after they phased out of Ghost Recon Breakpoint. However, during a September the 10th, 2022 press event, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot all but said that they were dead, effectively writing them off as something the company was just experimenting with, notwithstanding how determined they seemed to make it work back in December, telling a Eurogamer reporter the company was still, quote, in research mode, end quote, when it came to the blockchain. Real complicated case. A lot of ins, a lot of outs in this one. Game manufacturers' growing distaste over NFTs in 2022 might have been because of the deleterious environmental impact of crypto mining. It might have been the massive data breaches at the likes of Axie Infinity. It might have been the fact that gamers almost universally hated them. However, the cynic in me says that the most important factor driving mainstream game companies away from NFTs was the inescapable reality that the NFT market had utterly collapsed. 2022 was a rough year for the aspiring Metroid Dread Receipt investor. Overall, both sales and the value of NFTs have been trending significantly downward since a peak sales day on October the 27th, 2021, and a peak trading value on August the 29th, 2021. Tracking market data on the NFT site nonfungible.com, as of this recording, NFT sales over the past year, and just for the benefit of our listeners, we're recording this on October the 13th, 2022, are down 89.71% across the board, with initial NFT sales down 92.97%, and secondary NFT sales are down 89.24%. People are still buying and selling them, but the number of people involved in the NFT market is down significantly. The same report said that active NFT wallets are down 82.44% over the past year, and unique buyers are down 85.86%. This is not great.
Those are not good numbers.
And if you'll pardon another brief aside, there was a brief but sudden spike in NFT sales on May the 1st, 2022, where the market suddenly just shot up to over 122,000 NFT sales, valued at roughly $811 million, which is a huge increase all of a sudden. And I feel like it's worth taking a quick peek at that because it is so typical of everything we've covered, because it shot up and then it shot right back down. So let's talk about that temporary bump in the NFT market. The spike was largely due to Bored Apes Yacht Club. On April 30th, 2022, Yuga Labs, which is the company behind Bored Apes Yacht Club, launched an auction for Other Deed, which were digital plots of land for their upcoming game Other Side. The company put up for sale 55,000 plots of fake digital land with an initial asking fee of about $5,800 in what Yuga Labs boasted was the biggest NFT auction in history. Now, if you recall our discussion of CryptoKitties last episode, what happened next will sound extremely familiar, as the frantic digital land grab practically ground the Ethereum blockchain to a halt, and as a result, Ether miners began increasing their gas fees, and some people ended up paying as much as $14,000 just for their transaction to go through. That's not even considering the amount they paid for the land. And on top of that, numerous would-be digital landlords soon learned to their chagrin that they still had to pay the gas fee even if the transaction failed, and tons of the transactions failed because of how many of them were trying to do at the same time. And this forced Yuga Labs to start trying to compensate outraged investors for their lost transactions. It was a shit show.
Wow. So people just lost that much money without even getting anything. I mean, they weren't getting anything to begin with, but
yeah, this was for literally nothing. Like, not even the digital land they were trying to buy. It gets worse, because to make matters worse, the auction attracted tons of scammers who set up fake Other Deed auction websites and phishing schemes where they managed to steal over $6.2 million in crypto and NFTs from would-be ape investors.
oh, wow.
Following the Other Deed auction, the sales volume of NFTs fell right back down. It sunk like a stone, and it's been declining ever since. The woes of the NFT market also exacted their toll on the various video game-related ventures. Take Konami's Castlevania 35th Anniversary NFT line as an example. Now, if you recall, Konami minted 14 Castlevania-related NFTs, which the company put up for auction on January the 15th, 2022. Anyone want to guess how many resales of these NFTs have happened since the initial auction?
13.
Yeah, under 100.
I'll say 25.
One.
Whoa.
One has been resold. A single one of the line has been resold, and only once. The NFT of the Axe versus Phantom Bat clip from the original Castlevania for the NES was sold for 15 Ether on January the 23rd, 2022. And if you're curious for how much that is $38,124. Konami, of course, gets 10% of that.
Did the seller actually make money selling it?
Yeah, I believe they did.
This whole scheme with these NFTs where like they're going to get this commission every time it's sold, even though they're not really doing anything. I wonder if these things would work if it was a bit more reasonable. Like you can buy a piece of art that's going to sit on your wall forever, and then you don't have to pay the artist again if you're selling it to somebody else.
They'd be making so much money that way. Like if everything you bought, the original seller made money when you resold it.
I mean, if the facilitators make money, you take it to an auction house, you got to pay them for that process. And you have to sell to repay that person. It's almost like you're paying them so they can make money off of you. Because when you sell it, they're not going to pay you for selling it for them, right? You're going to pay them for selling it for them. It's silly.
One NFT transfer between users for no money, minus the gas fees on February 26th, but that's been it. There's been no other action on this line.
Brought to mind for me is a Castlevania quote. What is an NFT? Just a miserable pile of secrets.
Incidentally, the Atari capsule collection, since it launched on April 21st, I have one record of an NFT sale happening on July the 19th, 2021, who sold an NFT of the 2,600 cartridges of Centipede for what was then $2,700. But that's been it. There's been like no other sales on this line. Speaking of the Atari capsule collection, you might also be curious about those Centipede and Pong flagship NFTs, which if you recall were the autographed NFTs of the arcade cabinets, and there was the actual physical cabinet. This one's weird, and I don't have a good answer for this one, but this was just really weird. So I tried to track down the sales on this one. So the biggest NFT marketplace is a place called OpenSea. When Atari launched the capsule collection, they announced that they were partnering with 3 marketplaces. One of them was OpenSea, another one called Block Party, and another called Heritage Auction. And Heritage Auction is a mainstream auction house, which was handling if people sold bundles of them, they could sell them through Heritage. So Block Party looks like they facilitated even through OpenSea. I found a Block Party account connected on OpenSea. And so there are listings on Block Party about these NFTs. However, one of the challenges is that Block Party stopped doing NFT exchanges on September the 15th. They went back into beta phase. So they're not an active trading post anymore. So tracking between that and OpenSea, according to Block Party, both were listed as acquired, with bids on each of them registered a day after they went up for auction. There's a $7,500 bid on the Pong machine and a $12,250 bid for Centipede. That's what Block Party says. According to OpenSea, the Centipede cabinet never sold. Meanwhile, the Pong cabinet's weird. So according to OpenSea's records on their Block Party site for the capsule collection, the Pong cabinet was transferred on July the 15th, 2021 from Block Party to a user called super_position, who then transferred it back to Block Party an hour later. And then it was transferred again to Superposition on August the 11th, 2021. And after that, there's been absolutely no activity. So I don't know what to make of this. And as far as I can tell, Atari made no public statement about a sale on either of them, which you think they would do because those were the big ticket items. I have no record that a sale took place. I have no evidence that they ever did anything with this cabinet. I'm not making any assertions or anything. I just think it's really weird. And if people can offer me insights, I would love to hear them. scandalousgamespodcast@gmail.com. But we've got a legit mystery on our hands in this episode. As for Atari's GFT program, Atari minted 10,000 of its NFT loot boxes. Of those 10,000, 2% of them are currently listed for sale on OpenSea, and their value is really nothing special. Tracking the stats on OpenSea, there was a significant drop-off in sales after the line was launched. So, for example, an NFT of the 2,600 game Sword Quest that is listed as one of the epic rarity NFTs. That's the one that was like the 2% chance. Side note, Sword Quest is a wild story. It'll be a future episode. That one initially sold for 0.19 Ether on February the 22nd. 2022, which is about $509. It was resold on March the 1st for 2.5 Ether, which at that time was about $7,400. And it has sat on OpenSea ever since. Anybody want to guess what the current best offer is for this NFT? And this is the epic rarity. These are the rarest NFTs that are in the line.
I'm going to say 5,000.
I was going to say $50.
I'm coming in at $3.
The current best offer as of this recording is for $6.26.
$3 was the closest.
Yeah.
Good job, Elford.
I was way too optimistic.
That's probably why they haven't agreed to the sale yet. They're holding out for more. Meanwhile, Ubisoft's Quartz Digit line, in addition to being universally hated by fans, also failed to become a steady earner for the company. According to an April 6, 2022 report by Ars Technica, in the 4 months since Ubisoft launched the line, there have been only 96 sales despite minting thousands of NFTs for Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Now, in all fairness, you could make the argument that the people who bought these NFTs did so because they wanted to own a rare piece of video game history. Maybe that person who paid about $26,000 for a JPEG of the Castlevania 1 map felt so satisfied with their purchase that they just want to hold on to it forever, or at least as long as Konami supports the image connected to that reference to the blockchain. After that, you just own a very expensive Error 404 message. Nevertheless, as we have also covered, just selling a piece of history wasn't the point. The whole point was to people to resell this thing ad infinitum so that Konami and Atari and the rest of them would keep getting in this passive income. And if that's the measure of success, the Atari lines, the Konami lines were catastrophic failures. And as a result of those things, by mid to late 2022, even the most bullish supporters of NFT and blockchain elements in video games had begun changing their tune. But you know what? Don't feel too bad for mainstream game makers, because even if they couldn't make tons of money off Metroid Dread receipts, they could fall back on some more tried and true revenue generators. For example, a God Gadget report from July the 28th, 2022 noted that Diablo Immortal earned $100 million in 8 weeks, making it one of the most successful mobile games ever. The free-to-play MMO accomplished this thanks to being riddled with microtransactions and loot boxes, to the point that one report observed that it would cost a player roughly $110,000 to fully upgrade their character.
That's a lot of money for upgrades.
Sounds like they snagged enough whales, though.
Yeah. The game currently has a 0.4 user score on Metacritic, with users overwhelmingly calling out the game's pay-to-win mechanics. Meanwhile, a 2021 earnings report by Electronic Arts noted that Ultimate Team, a system present in EA Sports titles where players pay real money to buy card packs with players in them to build teams and compete online, generated $1.62 billion, accounting for 29% of the company's earnings. Meanwhile, Madden's franchise mode has been a dumpster fire for years, with EA stripping more and more features out every year in favor of more focus on Ultimate Team. On top of that, you'll be happy to know that Ubisoft quickly bounced back from Quartz, moving on by announcing in September 2022 that they plan to raise the retail price of several of their AAA games from $60 to $70. And that's where we'll wrap up. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I didn't think that anything could beat the 8-day high point of CryptoKitties, but just some of these companies not even making it 24 hours after their announcement of them backing out of the NFT game. I guess, you know what, maybe wanting to play games to earn money is also a fickle feeling, almost as fickle as playing for goodwill.
Very well said. I was really surprised that of all those that sold, they didn't resell any of it. Like, not a one, except for that one was resold.
I'm hoping that these game developers are listening to Scandalous Games and tuning in on how to, produce their products such that the gaming community embraces them wholeheartedly. I honestly generally want great game developers to make good profits off of their hard work. That would be great. And I'm not against companies experimenting. And what we learned today, I get it. These companies are experimenting with these ideas that a gamer that's been doing this for 30 plus years may not be interested in. And, they might want to test it on different markets to see if they can hook someone else. And I get that. But it would be great to see them come up with ideas that actually make sense, because I think there are definitely ideas that could be embraced that'll make them more money. I had to think about this one really hard. In our last podcast, we talked about frequent flyer points. And with the Ubisoft one, that really reminded me of they were getting close to that, but they were still kind of teetering around the outside. And I do think that there's room if they structure things differently and they try to figure out how to make profit the same way other companies are doing it, where the consumer feels like they're actually benefiting from the whole system. And I think there's a lot of space there for people to invest good ideas in that gamers would embrace. I believe that the major game systems have dabbled around a little bit with those sort of ideas, but never really fully invested in it. I think it might be hard for a single developer developer to do it, but in partnership with the console owners, I definitely think that there's potential. But it would be something where the NFT is really just a secondary benefit that you bought because you're buying into a currency system, no different than a frequent flyer point.
I feel like it also would have to be something in place to honor the value of it going forward, not just a vague thing of, oh, maybe you'll be able to bring this into another game. They should have like an actual plan for how am I going to use this later? Is there going to be a use for it later? That would give it more value and maybe more people would want it.
You know, imagine a system where you bought your NFT for $5 and it gave you $3 worth of PlayStation coins, right? And those 3 PlayStation coins are pretty much worth $3 in PlayStation. And you can purchase things, and you can also purchase real product just on a marketplace that they control, similar to the company stores that many credit cards have. And those things are traded on the secondary market, those type of credits. And it adds real value to the thing that you bought. This system could be tied to purchase of new products like brand new DLC, brand new downloadable games, and brand new console games. This could be something that when you purchase a pre-order, instead of, them trying to get another extra $10 out of you to get some sort of in-game content, which it was working before. I don't know how successful it is anymore. Now you have Amazon just dropping the price. When you buy your new games, they come with a certain amount of credit to help keep that price up, right? And people start getting these little pieces of script that actually have real value and keep more money in the system. I don't know. Anyway.
I think that's a good observation. I know that the Nintendo Marketplace for the Switch has something like that, where it's kind of like credit card rewards points, where like every time you make a purchase, you get a certain small number of in-game purchase points, and you accumulate more of them every time you buy games, to the point that if you saved up enough, you could buy some games. Like I remember I had enough on my Switch Online store where I had like $2, and so I think I bought Doom 2 for that. So I got something of value out of that. So I think there's a place where there's a way of doing that. And I also, stepping back, and like we've had our jokes with NFTs and stuff, I can see people's interest in those kinds of things. I mean, as a kid, I collected baseball cards, and like there's a certain excitement of having this thing. And cards are, for the most part, just there to be either be kept or traded or sold. So I can see a certain interest in that. And we talked a bit about before, like the idea of, in some ways with live service games, some people are excited by the idea of like, oh, there's going to be constantly new things. The company's going to keep supporting this game and new stuff's going to come in. There's a certain novelty there and a certain status symbol for that. That having been said, I can never completely disentangle that kind of appeal for something like an NFT from just the other stuff that's with it. From the fact that the blockchain by its design is really not technically scalable, that it seems like it's unsustainable, that it's so environmentally destructive, and that it's just so riddled with scams. And again, this whole idea of this, I would say, dangerously unregulated market where, like, what's to stop something like, assuming that an NFT system like Ubisoft's, let's assume that the Tezos blockchain, what happens when the Tezos blockchain gets hit the way Axie Infinity's Ronin blockchain did, where all of a sudden the security just completely breaks down? Like, you could argue that the game companies have huge teams in place that are designed to handle data breaches and things like that, but oftentimes these blockchain ones are like, a couple of guys in their basement kind of thing, stitching this together for some 16-year-old's code, like we talked about last time. I can see the kernel of the idea where this could be appealing, but it comes with so many asterisks that it almost seems, in its current form, so unsustainable and unmanageable. And it kind of depresses me a little bit that I'm pretty sure that the reason that game companies aren't pushing this any further is because it's not making them money. And so with that, to start wrapping up this episode, I thought I would give the last word to one of the sources that's been really useful in framing my understanding of some of the context, the ideology, and some of the other things, like a lot of the Mt. Gox stuff from last time. It's this book, Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain by David Gerard. And so to wrap things up, I'm just going to read the last 4 paragraphs. It's fairly short to wrap things up on. And for context, he wrote this before NFTs were a thing. This book came out in 2017. So this is well before the NFT market. But I think a lot of the stuff still holds up. Quote, Bitcoin itself, as an ideology fundamentally at odds with reality, based on a technology that reached its limits in 2015, will keep lurching from crisis to crisis. The price will rise and fall dizzyingly, though realizing it as actual money will still be strangely problematic. Exchanges will continue to be hacked on a monthly basis. People continue to lament, if only I'd bought in 2011, I'd be rich. Though if they had bought it in 2011, they'd have lost it in Mt. Gox. Cooler heads will wonder just how much longer this can be kept going. changing. The one constant is new ideas in finance bring new starry-eyed knaves and new predators. New technologies will keep being used as an excuse to put an extra layer of flim-flam over old scams in an ongoing historical reenactment of the reasons for each and every financial regulation. There will be more promises of free riches in the future and more asset bubbles. All of this will happen again. And parenthetically, the NFT market says he was proven right. The hook may be different, but wishful thinking and scammers to prey on it are eternal. Everything to do with cryptocurrencies and blockchains is the domain of fast-talking con men. If anyone tries to sell you on either, kick them in the nuts and run, end quote. And that will do it for today's episode of Scandalous Games. If you like what we're doing and want to help the show, subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a rating. If you want to learn more, check out our website, scandalousgamespodcast.wordpress.com, where I publish the show notes and the sources for every episode. Our theme music is Occam Sequi by Seek Knowledge via the Free Music Archive, used under a CC BY NC SA 3.0 US license. If you have a question, comment, or an idea for a topic for a future episode, email us at scandalousgamespodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Kevin Impellizeri.
I'm Andy Hunter.
I'm Elford Stephens.
And I'm Ryan Weaver. Thanks for having me again, guys.
Thanks for coming on. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next Scandal. We'll spend the rest of the time working on Phil's legal defense. And subscribe to Fat Roll Gaming on YouTube.
Save Phil.
Free Phil.